All right. Welcome back to the Art of Profit Lifestyle Gym. Good morning, Andrea. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Great
It
being here.
is holiday season coming up. We've
Yeah, I,
got,
I was telling my husband yesterday, which was November 16th. I was like, we're in the holiday season. And he's like, no, we're not. The holiday season starts after Thanksgiving. And I was like, no, it starts in November. And he was like, no, you're wrong. And I'm like, isn't this obvious? So I guess when do you think the holiday season starts?
Jared's not feeling the vibe. I think you need to maybe a little more energy around the house, thinking about,
Which is so weird because we have Christmas lights up and everything. And I'm like,
oh, that's why you've confused him that you've basically skipped over Thanksgiving. And that's why I'm glad we talked about this. So, yeah, I think now, especially in the gym industry, where every owner kind of knows this season because members will start putting their accounts on hold. People are in this state of like shopping but maybe not ready is kind of the tone or the vibe sometimes. But intentionally this year, Steph and I are really leaning into holiday, like shutting down hours, limiting schedules, and just going all in on recharge, family time. So I feel it. I'm in it. So I'd kick it off this week with a pre-week if I could.
Nice. Cool.
So anyhow, happy holidays to you guys out there if you catch this the week of. But today we're diving into basically part two, right? Of first understanding what the difference between growth and scale is in your company, which we talked through last episode. And then leaning into how to deliver solutions that solve, prospective clients and current clients' problems, but specifically through scale, through ways that, in turn, we've defined this last call, but to deliver, outcomes of substantial value on as little time and effort as possible, so we can max out that ROI. And if you are thinking about that, you have to start applying that to the way that you deliver your service, the way that you actively show up in your business each and every day. Or you can find yourself in a position where I think you feel overloaded or overworked, or things are kind of, continuing to feel like you're just spinning your wheels. And that's why we want to have this conversation about what are the things that you can really focus on to get the most out of your time and effort and ROI.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just kind of piggybacking off of last week with our scaling service. Like we're really continuing this conversation on like what it is to scale. And we unpacked that last week, but then this is going to go into like how practically. And I think something that is worth saying is we are going to talk about scaling our delivery, which can also be said as we're going to be talking about offering solutions at scale, which can also be said as solving problems at scale, right? I think sometimes like delivery can just feel like, oh, I offer a class and like that's what they come to. But a delivery of the service that you offer is essentially you offering enough solutions in order for your clients to have a complete transformation. And that's going to require that you solve problems. So, yeah, I think a lot of times the way that we think about like the programs that we sell, I think is more of like, it becomes like such an easy sell because it's like we're essentially helping somebody become someone else, think differently, get consistency, build habits. And like all of that requires more than just like, here's a class that you have an option to show up to. And I think sometimes that gets lost in translation when we talk about delivery. I think a lot of gym owners are like, yeah, my service is my class. And I'm like, no, that's one part. That is one solution that you offer someone. There are a lot of different solutions, and you putting those solutions together in a program that someone goes through offers a transformation. You have a process that you walk someone through. So in this conversation, we're going to talk about like how to actually scale all of those solutions that you offer to your entire membership.
Right. And
I didn't lose anyone there, but I'm like, it's a different.
yeah, I mean that I think is such a great point where so many people are limiting their value or only seeing and paying attention to one aspect of everything that they're providing inside their membership. And what we're trying to do is lay the foundation to say, hey, look, your coaching program is made up of all these things that ultimately are only put in there to contribute to getting that client to the results that they want. And we have to recognize that this isn't about just throwing all these different types of features and solutions at people. Like, it's intentional because the amount of time and energy it takes to deliver your service matters. And, if in our previous podcasts, I've talked through trying to offer up solutions that cost me so much energy and time or people that it made the business unrealistic in its profitability or even to manage. So when we go through this today, I really want people to understand that this is like the minimum amount of stuff you can provide for the maximum amount of result for your client. And that's, in a sense, putting that layer of filter on and say, do the solutions that I'm providing for my client actually scale the company? And we start getting to, massive transformations.
Yeah. So what I think we're gonna talk about like three ways to scale your service in particular. And let's start kind of with the first one that I feel like is a huge bottleneck to a lot of people is onboarding. So here's an example of not scaling your onboarding. It is offering one-on-one sessions with every person who joins your gym as a way to onboard them. That is a way to deliver a service, but that is not a way to deliver a service through scale. And so what we teach our clients inside our program Momentum is like, how do you still create, again, like a definition of scaling, you create an experience that's better for the client, that's lean for the business, and that's ultimately going to allow you to be more profitable. And so what we've came up with and teach our clients is a one class group onboard. So talk to us about what that looks like and kind of even what led you to do it that way.
Yeah, I think originally the heart of all coaches is wanting to, feel like you can take someone who's new to the class and just help them feel comfortable or help them feel secure in, that they made a good decision to work with you. But you're also in the back of your mind saying, well, is this person right for class? Is this person ready and going to fit into the already existing flow of class? Because there's a lot of, issues that pop up down the road with coaches, recognizing that someone doesn't quite fit into the class because they're too deconditioned or, they don't move at the same intensity or pace of class. And it starts getting into a challenge. So that was one of the first things to recognize, that a lot of people chose one-on-one to try and solve that problem. The challenge was that they chose something that required a lot of time, taking people out of really the interest and the value behind group training. So it almost like devalued the group atmosphere, the full, I think, value of why people love group is that social aspect, that recognition that they are going to get personalized coaching and that it's going to be fun. But if you remove that and you focus down that one-on-one, you really start to change your whole model away from the thing that they wanted to begin with. So we needed a way to say, hey, how do we have the personalization like one-on-one, but how do we, help people see that group's right for them, help people recognize that the atmosphere is fun, that they are going to be social, and they're going to get instantly the things that they're looking for from a group program the very first moment that they get started with us. So we needed a solution for that. Originally, I did this one-on-one, and I realized that, I was
what one-on-one?
onboarding. So I took someone from the point of sale directly into a single class, but I only allowed one person in there. And I was trying to do those same things. I was trying to ensure they were safe, they were ready for group. And, it kind of evolved that I was skipping some key things a part of the service. So as we said, hey, I can get more people in here because I'm a master at, group coaching. I have 15 to 20 people on the floor. Why couldn't I do that with more people? And I was kind of bottlenecking that aspect of the business simply by not leaning into the skill and the group atmosphere that I could handle every single day. So this was no different. I think that was like some kind of limiting belief.
I think it's important to also say you didn't say, oh, I can handle 20 people, so let me put 20 people in my group onboard class. So it wasn't like that, because I think there is a part of you that recognized like these are brand new people. I need to pay more attention to them. I do need to give them extra attention and support if this is their first time coming into the gym and doing any sort of exercise movement. So that's why your class limit is 4.
Right.
And I think that is a really great number in the sense that like, it's not like you're throwing someone into a class of 20 or 15. You're allowing someone to experience a group coaching environment, but with the limit of like, there's 4 people here. I'm an expert. I can handle 4 people and keep them safe very well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, that number had fluctuated until I got to what my proven process it was for onboarding. So I started looking at, well, I could expand it and I could run someone through, a workout to see how they move and assess whether they've got the readiness of, someone right for group. Well, over time, I started realizing that this first meeting is really important for a couple of reasons. One, as a coaching program, I wanted to know where they were starting. And I realized that a lot of people have an interest in, I want to improve my overall conditioning and fitness. That was one, goal. But they also had a lot of body composition goals, like losing weight, building muscle. And that was really important. And I think a lot of coaches, you guys could probably reflect and say, hey, people do ask me for those things. So I wanted to bring that piece into it as a way to understand where their body composition was. So we use an InBody. It wasn't always there, but it was the thing they were asking for. So it was a problem and I wanted a solution for it. However, that changed if I, had to run someone through a InBody and then about a, 8 to 12 minute workout. You start looking at that time and say, well, I can't get everybody on the scale. So it was actually a restraint of how could I get enough people through this in a reasonable amount of time, like an hour class. And that's where we recognized that 4 was kind of the magic number. I've done 6, but it really made everything tight to the point where I couldn't answer questions, help new people feel settled in terms of like how to use the app, how to reserve classes, little stuff like helping them feel settled. And I wanted to include that member experience in there. So ultimately 4 people was just the right amount of time to give everyone the personalization and the attention that they needed at that stage of getting started, but still getting what we wanted out of it, which was a starting place for body comp and fitness, and then the scalability so I could have up to 4 people. And, from there, if I ran 2 of these per week, I could essentially enroll 8 new people a week, which gave me all of this time and energy back that I was kind of only limiting myself before to 1 person per appointment. So you could see that, I 4x'd my ability to go from like enrolling 2 people a week to 8. And that's where things really started to transform without giving up, I think, the quality of, 101 and doing it in a smaller group setting.
Yeah. Why didn't you, because it seems like you always were set on like, oh, we're going to onboard in 1 day. And I feel like that's not the norm. A lot of people are like, we're not going to onboard in 1 day. In fact, we're going to onboard in 6 sessions and they're going to be one-on-one, which is, I feel like, whoa, this is a little extreme. And then there's the other side. It's like, oh, no, we're going to onboard in group. We're going to call it foundations, but definitely not 1 day. We have to tell people how to do this and we have to teach these skills. And it's going to be like a 2-week class or 6 class pack thing. So that seems to be the consensus among the industry, is like one day doesn't feel like enough. And I guess, what are your thoughts? Like, why did it feel like enough? Like, why did you not feel the need to have that mini class 3 or 4 other times before someone joined like the larger group?
Yeah, good question. I think for me, I've always had a passion for group training and really was never interested in one-on-one. I didn't enjoy it. It didn't make me feel fulfilled. And that's really not why we started. So when applying that thought process, it was like maybe one more layer deeper than maybe the person who's doing personal training saying, well, yes, that's an option to onboard one-on-one and have multiple sessions. It wasn't a good solution for being a group training program. So we really stuck to that, outcome or that goal and say, whatever we solve this problem by, it should be in the group setting.
Like,
Yeah, to be able to achieve that. I just wasn't hitting full scale because I was limited to one, thinking, originally like I could only handle one because I needed to slow it down. And then as I got more efficient and developed a proven process, I could go to 2 and then 3 and then 4. And 4 really became the number that everything felt comfortable and confident. And they could go from sign up to a single class group onboarding right into class, because I didn't feel like I had to correct this person all in a single week or within 3 sessions. That's really what the group program was designed to do. The group classes are meant to coach people through progressions, meant to introduce people to the workouts in a way that matches where they're starting. And they wouldn't get on the floor unless they were ready and right for a group. So that's the key thing, is this is also a qualifying opportunity to say this person can handle the intensity and the group atmosphere. One-on-one can kind of limit that because you think you can help everybody. And that has to be an important piece of the enrollment process. Say, I can only help group ready people. One-on-one can really lead you to believe you can work with anyone or everyone, and you can, but that's not really what you're preparing them for. If you take everybody through personal training, is how I look at it.
Yeah. So I have two things that came up. Number one, why didn't you do multiple classes in group, like a foundations? So you kind of explained why you didn't do one-on-one, but why didn't you do a foundations? That's question one. Question two, so is this just a programming issue? Like, is it essentially just like, if not enough people are ready for your program, instead of like trying to change your onboard to make them ready for your program, like, why don't you just like change your program? And I think that the counter there is, well, my members like my programming, so I have to keep that the same. So we can talk about that. Let's shelve that. But like, I guess the first thing is like, why don't you just do a foundations?
Yeah, well, the truth is I did. And I realized over time that I was running into, challenges with getting people essentially into the program. So by doing foundations, it created another class schedule, more overhead. So I needed, more employees. And then on top of that, if I didn't have enough people into that foundations at a given time, it really wasn't profitable because all of that overhead was eating up that. So it created this kind of bottleneck where you'd get excited about enrolling someone, but only to see all of that hard work, essentially roll right out with the budget in form of expenses. So it created some of that structural problem. In addition to that, the culture really felt off, meaning like we weren't a culture of being able to practice and learn and grow together. It became almost like divided, like who's the beginner and who's already figured it out. And it was very divided. I never really liked that vibe or that feeling. It also masked, I think, to your part 2 of the question, some major issues on the difficulty or the complexity of the programming we were providing. It almost like made it a hurdle or a barrier to get into the class. So that was absolutely an issue. In addition to that, it presented some coaching weaknesses. Like, why couldn't we address certain people in the program? Why did we have such a hard time implementing progressions for, new and existing people? And we had to go there and start to understand that these are some really big variables that if we don't look at, no matter what your onboarding system is, you could be running right into those by getting people in your group if you're not addressing the coaching quality and that education piece for everybody on your floor and the actual workouts that you're putting in front of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like, again, mentioned the pushback on that would be, but my members like my programming or are used to my programming. And you had a very similar transition where you offered like classes for like general health, like just general fitness. You're not trying to go to the games, you're just like want to work out for fun and health wise. And then you had a performance class, which are people who like are taking it a little more seriously, want to compete maybe locally or, you know, at some level. And you had kind of like pockets of people that like kind of gravitated towards one or the other. But then you shut it down. You're like, we're not doing two programs. We're doing one program for everyone. Everyone get on board. So what was that like? Did you have members that are like, I'm leaving, this is not what I wanted anymore? Did you have to, like, how did you navigate that? Because I think that's like changing programming might seem like a very easy thing, but if it like feels like, but if I change this, people will leave, it becomes a little bit heavier of a decision.
Yeah, I think that at that stage, we were really, it's almost like niching down from group and really creating these very specific program workout designs based on outcomes. So you mentioned like the performance program being more sport-like, competitive, the health program being more general wellness and strength and conditioning. And then we created that other non-barbell program. And in my coaching mindset, I was saying, hey, I'm going to fill these classes because I can now help anyone with any interest. You know, the non-barbell class could help anyone off the street and who was maybe intimidated. And then it'd be a great progression in introduction to barbell work in our, you know, CrossFit health program. And then when they, you know, ascend up, they've got the competitive, you know, atmosphere. Well, what it ended up doing was it was a big fight for our schedule, because in the gym industry, your busiest times tend to be your morning people before work and they need to get it in or get kids off to school. And then your evenings when people are getting off work. And what I ended up struggling with is I was challenged by, well, which class gets, you know, that class hour? And then you run into, well, I need all three of them to operate at that same hour. And then that radically changed the amount of team size we had, the amount of space we were renting. And then that adds complexity to the business and more costs. And now you have essentially 3 gyms to fill and keep, you know, fully built so that they could make money. So it ended up being, in many cases, 3 businesses in one, trying to keep that model working. And they were competing for those ideal class times.
Yeah. So what was it like to cancel those other 2?
It was nerve-wracking. I mean, anytime you make a promise to someone, you know, on the sales side, you know, you want to fulfill that, and you feel that pressure that, well, I already promised this person that we would, you know, offer this great service and get them to the outcome, and we needed that business. So there's that side of it, feeling like I'm not fulfilling on that promise. And then on the other side, you know, I'm going to lose these people that really find a lot of value in, say, the competitive sport-like program. But maybe there's not so many of them, but they're the most dedicated or consistent people that I would see because they train the most. So there's that like friendship or friendliness of like, man, I'm letting those people down. And now they don't have a place that they love. I'm not going to be able to see them. I'm going to lose them. They're going to think less of me. So there's like all those emotions. And then there's me stepping back and saying, if I focused on one particular program and tried to build in a reasonable amount of scale between someone just starting and someone trying to stay in shape year round, and then, you know, worked on progressions, worked on getting people to all go through the same workout, but personalize that in a class, that would be a dream. So in a way, I had to be kind of selfish and say, this is what's going to work best for me and for my, at the moment, I didn't know this, but this was the ideal client epiphany of saying, there is a particular person that I am suited to work with to make the business run. And I hadn't learned that yet until that moment of saying, hey, we need to consolidate everything so that the business runs more smoothly and simply. I can target market and make promises that I can keep year round. And, I actually enjoy running the business, and it doesn't have all these complexities of multiple classes, multiple floors, multiple coaches all needing to be on at the same time. And that's that moment I said, hey, this is a better way for everybody moving forward. It's just going to put me in front of some tough conversations. And the truth is, I did lose some people. I did have to be okay with that. And that was hard, but it was a necessity, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like getting really clear on who you want to serve. And I think you just chose like, this is the person I want to serve. Their fitness level is typically from here to here. These are the boundaries that they're in. But that's not to say that like, somebody listening might be like, actually, I want to teach the people who like have never worked out ever. Now that's going to be a different business model, right? Because maybe onboarding is going to be different. But I think like, it's really important for you to like decide, who do you like to train? And then also, how do you bring that into your business in a way that allows you to continue to, scale, allows you to keep things lean and profitable?
Here's actually the hardest part of, and this had to do with my identity and my coach's identity, where basically you're in a certain stage of fitness and you've got some skills, you've got some, fitness above the average person coming in or seeking out training. So you actually love working out in class and being around top performers. And that's kind of confusing when you say, well, where am I going to work out? Where's my place in this gym? Right. And it's kind of humbling when you realize that moment where your gym's not really built for, the high performer. You actually need a lot of clients that have problems that you can solve readily and that there's an abundance of, so that new business continues to come in and you can train people year round that need your service and need your solutions. And as they get more skilled, in many cases, if you don't get more specialized in terms of, technical or sport-like for those people who have that high interest to compete, you start to really create this wide gap of what there's an abundance of people that want to live a healthier, lifestyle, and who's out there in that high competitive interest zone. So you really can pull yourself into that high competitive zone if that's who you are as a coach and an identity, because you enjoy that. And that was the moment I think I realized that I'm not an ideal client. So I need to back myself out of this emotionally and say, well, I need to rethink who my ideal client is. And I think that was the moment when I started getting into my later years, I started really in my 20s, my young 20s. So I was very much into competitive fitness, and I found my sport again. Well, when I got in my 30s and started having a family, I really shifted towards long-term lifestyle, in terms of just staying consistent, making measurable, gains. And that really centered me to say, hey, this is a great sweet spot to be consistent and see people achieve their results year round among general fitness. So I think that was like kind of a reshifting and centering too of who's my, ideal member. And I will have to kind of cut off some ends of the programming of high complexity, high skill, and some low ends of like people that need a lot of attention and a lot of individualization, and kind of meet in the middle. And once I understood that that was my role, is to go after helping those people, because that's who I could have the biggest transformation. And truthfully, that's who I loved working with and seeing those massive gains and outcomes of building a lifestyle. That became clear to me that I am not the ideal client. My coaches are not the ideal client. And I spent a lot of years thinking that I could provide all these ranges, but it ended up being very difficult to try and serve so many different types of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is like a good thing to reflect on, is that like maybe you're not the ideal client for the like that your gym needs. And for some people, like I think there's, from what I see, there's two kind of experiences, whether it's like, okay, I've always been athletic, I've always liked fitness, I've always been into it, I've always known I was gonna like be in the fitness space at some capacity, and now I'm a gym owner. And then there's like, I stumbled across CrossFit, I wasn't really in shape. I loved it. I like had my own transformation, and then I was like, I want to own a gym. So one experience is like, I've always been fit, I found it, it's great, and now I want, and then this is like, I actually had my own transformation. I think it's easier for the person who like had their own transformation to kind of tap into how like transformative that could be. And it takes a little bit more of like a realignment for the other type of person who's like, I've always been into fitness, to like kind of like tap into like, oh, but that's actually not everyone's experience. Like your experience is very unique and it's great and it's needed because you've just always been on board for this. But it takes more intentionality of like, wait, so not everybody like loves this from day one, and like, you know what I mean? And I think that like that shift has to happen in order for you to like really serve your people, and you have to be on it.
I think this is why there's a big struggle with marketing. It's almost like the deeper you get into your own fitness journey, you forget where you are at mindset wise and ability and skill and what those early feelings are. And talking about those things almost feels like so in the past or beneath you, or like that you've already accomplished them. Or in my case, I can relate to like I skip a lot of steps because my brain just has solved these fitness problems about like, eating consistently, or of high quality foods, or sticking to a mindset where I can easily roll over a bad workout. And some people struggle with, if they miss a meal, it's like the most defeating thing and it sets everything off track. Or if you show up to a workout and you have a really bad workout, you get so in your head like you're a failure, and then they'll get in a place where they're not good enough, and then they skip a week, and then it's this perpetual cycle, and
because
we
they're
forget.
not the person yet, they're becoming the person. And I think that's like the beauty of your program, is like, it's not just about classes. Like you are helping someone become a completely different person when it comes to health and fitness. Like I didn't learn what a squat was. We're kind of going off topic, but let's like after this we can kind of go back.
Right.
I didn't learn what a squat was until I was 21. I didn't know an apple was carbs. Like I didn't know cheese was fat. Like just had no idea. And now that just feels like so elementary. Like I always catch myself like being like, what? You don't know bananas are carbs? Like it really like baffles me. And I'm like, it shouldn't, because one, nobody teaches us.
Yep.
And two, the only reason I know is because I had this transformation. Like I joined a gym. I like, did all of these different things right after graduating college, and like that facilitated my transformation. And so I think that like sometimes it's good to be reminded, like the really basic things that you take for granted, like people really have no idea. They don't know what full depth is. They don't know what mobility is. Like, there's so much that like your program offers that really creates and shapes a person for the rest of their life. And like, that's just really rewarding to be a part of that.
So let's talk about that in terms of bringing this back on track for scalable solutions, right? So when you tap into understanding that you're not your best ideal client because of where you're at in the journey, but there's a lot of people out there that are going to choose you because you've solved those problems, because you have a proven plan. And when you really center on that, that's when you start to get serious about aligning them with the right steps. And that starts to speak to one of our next solutions for solving consistency. There's so many people that come to me that say, hey, I've started on my own, but I always seem to quit. Or, I get rolling and I see a little bit of results, and then my schedule gets crazy, my work, my kids, and then it just throws me completely off. And that's the pattern I've been in for a long time. So I need help with accountability. And if I could just stay consistent year round, I feel like I'd be happy and on track and, have what I've always wanted. So they're literally telling us they don't have a solution to the consistency problem. So insert, where we can become more than just a class. And you start thinking about, well, what do I provide to create consistency and fix this problem? So one of the things that we found was we implemented attendance accountability. Okay. And we talk about that on the sales side, but from a delivery standpoint, one of the first things that we can really identify if someone's struggling with a consistency problem is when we do, attendance, people have to train with us at least 3 times a week. We found that that's a minimum amount. And if they miss a week of training, whether it be life or work or whatever, and we don't know that they're on hold or traveling, well, that should be a sign and a flag that something's going on with that person and they've fallen off track, right? And if we're the service that promises our job is to help keep you consistent year round, we needed a solution in there. So the softwares will actually act as our assistant and actually message us as the administrative, coaching support team and say, hey, this person's fallen off track. And then that cues us to reach out to that person to offer that additional support. And, whether it be motivation, whether it be talking through the mindset piece. But that's one of the first major, I think, service solutions that we should be focused on and saying, if someone's not in class for a week, red flag, and then how are we going to help be there for them? Because that's one of the number one problems that they're bringing us. And if we can fix that, in addition to the group class, we have just ratcheted up our value tremendously for the busy working professional or parent that really struggles with getting themselves back on track when life kind of feels like it came at them and knocked them off. Well, we get them back on the horse and say, hey, I got you. Let's talk about your next class, tomorrow.
Yeah. So. And I think that's really important to even like the mindset of you as the gym owner is you're not accountable. Like you're not completely responsible for them being consistent, but you are accountable and responsible for providing them with the support to build that skill set and habit. And I think sometimes like what happens is like, oh, they just don't show up. It's on them. And it's like, okay, but what did you actually do to help them build the skill that you promised that you would help them build? Too often, like as owners, we don't take responsibility for our clients' results and we just pass it off of like, oh, they're just not doing it. They're not committed. They're just not motivated. They're not engaged. And we place a lot of that on them. And that's not helpful to create a great service. So I think it's always good to be like, yes, and what am I doing to help them be motivated? What am I doing to help them stay consistent? What am I doing to help them stay engaged? That's your responsibility as the owner who's promising a transformation. And if the biggest thing that your people want is consistency, which across the board is like the thing that everybody says, like, I'm just not consistent. I'm just not consistent. How do you and how does your business support that transformation, support them building that skill? And so I think that just kind of like overview of like how to look into it. And then as far as like logistics for you, being able to track all of those things is the thing that ties everything together. So do you have like a mandatory, like everybody has to check in before class? Is your coach responsible for that? Like, how do you make sure that that system actually runs and attendance is accounted for? And then like, if somebody does skip 7 days, what happens? Like you're notified and then you reach out. And then what if they skip another 7 days? Like what kind of happens? Walk us through your whole process.
Yeah. So early on, I didn't have this feature. I didn't, I couldn't see it. Like I was telling you before, it's like it was already ingrained that I was disciplined and a workout person. But to your point, they're trying to become that person, and we need those support systems in place. So when this fully got implemented, there was a clear understanding that we needed a tool in place, which meant we had to go from kind of a show up whenever, at whichever class time, to actually reserving classes. And it was through that transition that one put a name in a class. And then when someone does show up, our coach on our, app will check that person in. And that's why you'll have like a reservation and then a check-in option on these softwares. So that it's one thing, it's intentional that I'm going to be here. And that helps us from a programming side say, we get to determine how many people are in class and who we could program for safely. So I like that aspect of having a cap at 15. And then anyone on that roster needs to be checked in. And if they're not checked in, we can send automations, whether it's to the client or to the coaching staff to then do something about that. If it's they're registering for class but not showing up, that's one issue. Or to your point, if they're skipping a whole week, that's kind of escalated to a point where how do we respond to that with the right level of coaching, whether it be mindset or support if they've got a hard thing going on in their life. But that's kind of the first, where do we find the issue? Well, it's flagged in the system, but you do need an attendance model for that system to notify you based on a certain number of days from their previous attendance. And that's how you actually get this thing up and running. And then from there, you're essentially working on, well, what do I want to say to this person? How do I encourage them, but not shame them? So there's a lot of the mindset and psychology piece in there. But the first step, is just recognizing who is needing help. And your accountability is tied to using your software in the right way to actually provide this level of service that I think should be mandatory in every small group training. But that's how we do it. And then the coach checks them in. And then from there, if there's no attendance within 5 days, we will actually get a notification out to the member saying, hey, we missed you. When's your next class? And then 2, it will send it to the coach responsible for our membership follow-up. And then from there, we'll reach out to them via text and say, hey, I noticed you're out for a week. Fill me in. Where's your head at right now? And just get some dialogue and start there versus like, we didn't see you in here, and like immediately start attacking, the class attendance issue. Because we don't know what happened. It could be a death in the family. It could be a really hard, life event, like a loss of a pet. Those things can throw you completely off. So that's how we're showing up for our client, and first getting the story and then offering the appropriate, coaching support outside.
Yeah. I think that's so important to, not only have like responsibility for the transformation as an owner, but then also like logistically, okay, I'm responsible. Like, how is this going to work? And leaning into the softwares, automations, and building that out is just going to be an added touch of like, oh, like I'm paying them to help me be consistent and they're following through with their promise. Like that makes a huge difference. It also makes a huge difference when someone like doesn't show up for 14 days and like literally no one reaches out to them. It's like, okay, well, okay. It just feels like not great as a member. So
Right.
I think that's good to think through that like extra level of support. But then, so those are kind of the 2 things that we talked about, is onboarding and attendance as a way to create a solution through Scale. Onboarding, the solution through Scale is a 1-class group onboard. Attendance, the solution through Scale is having automations and a system to reach out and kind of like let the system know when one of your members needs that extra touch point. The 3rd thing is support and guidance. Like, let's expand that. What does that look like? I feel like that can be a little general and vague, but like, what does that mean for you?
Yeah. So going back to this concept of, a client journey where someone's starting and they feel off track, and then they want to become this healthier version of themselves. That ultimately is considered what we call the client journey. Where are they at in that process? And each one, is kind of on their own journey, but there's a timeline involved in that. And basically from the start of the training, as they go through this process of transforming themselves, we've set up touch points via email and text message to literally check in for more support. Things as simple as, within the first week saying, hey, how are you feeling after your first week with soreness? And then just getting that dialogue to say, oh, Chris, I'm so, sore. And then being able to support them, say, hey, don't worry. This is normal. As you get more conditioned, your body's going to recover faster. As you get more accustomed to the style of training, you're going to feel your body start to recover, quicker. So just helping them become that workout person means educating them. So as it goes into the program, about every 3 weeks, we'll offer up some kind of check-in with the goal of getting engagement. So it might be, how are you feeling, on track or off track with your consistency? And I just want to open that up. And then as they get in a little bit more into the program, 6 weeks, 9 weeks, 12 weeks, how are you feeling with your nutrition? How are you feeling with your sleep? How are you feeling with, mentally going into your workouts? So all those things are just meant to be supportive, but I don't know where they're thinking or where their feelings are until I ask them. And if I try to implement something that I'm guessing or saying you should be here, that's never really felt authentic because I don't know where they're at, and I kind of have to meet them where they're at in their own journey. So making sure that you look at timelines where you can check in every so often and just getting a conversation started. So questions that are open-ended work really well to getting full perspective on letting them speak to the problem, let them speak to their feelings. And then that's where I think it becomes supportive versus trying to guess or offer up some kind of solution that doesn't match where they're at in the program. So we would structure that to always go through the phases of training. And as we've talked about on here, there's two. We do one program, two memberships. So there's touch points for our initial coaching program, that's 12 weeks. And then there's touch points for our core coaching program that essentially operates on a 6-month cycle.
Yeah. I have two things that kind of came up when you were saying that. Your responses, do people respond to those emails? Because I feel like sometimes maybe like someone might be apprehensive to like set up automations because it's like, oh, people know it's automated. They're maybe not going to respond. Have you seen that to be the case for your gym, or do you get responses at a high rate, which allows you to, kind of help people where they're at?
Yeah. I mean, I think we've all kind of tried to optimize this and say, hey, the very basic level would be, can I reach out to clients? So I think that's a first starting place of, if you're not doing that, that's like level one, right? Of just reach out to them and let them know you're there, because they see it. And to your point, they may not respond because they're super busy, or, it didn't match how they were feeling. So they just disregarded it. Or it hit their junk mail. There's simple problems to fix. But what I've found is that the more simple the questions and the more they are clear, we get more responses. So that's one of the things I learned early on. I had at one point like a 20 question survey going out, and I was like, yeah, I was like, I'm going to build the biggest profile. I'm going to solve everything in their life. And that was a major learning curve. Like nobody filled that out. Yeah. And then
it's true. If you see like a questionnaire that's like 2 questions, you're like, I can do this. But if it's like 27, you're like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. So the dose of questioning matters. And then also recognizing where they're at. Emails, I'm learning that as we move forward, the starting email and the finishing email are more responded to, but the communication in between those, I'm finding text message is actually a better communication channel for most people, but you're not going to get the same amount of, say, like characters or volume because the way people text. So you really want to limit it to 1 to 2 questions only. And then that's where we're seeing a lot more engagement because people love to text, but they're also busy. So picking it up when they have time or returning to the conversation, if they, text you, it may take them a couple hours or a day to get back to it. But that's the shift I see moving forward in how people prefer to be contacted. More and more people are actually on board with texting and prefer it. And they feel, I think, more like they have a coach that is invested beyond just class. With that communication, it's really valuable to them because now they're able to open up about concerns or thoughts or feelings that are not headed in the path or direction they want. And then we can, in real time, offer up advice or tools or resources that they didn't know. But yeah, text is easily proving to be a better vehicle, but make sure you're very aware that people only have so much time above and beyond work or kids or personal time to respond. And you have a small window to catch their attention and simplify it so they feel like, yes, I want to respond to this. This is relevant for me.
Yeah. And the other thing that came up is like to scale, it really requires that you're dialed in with your systems and your softwares. And I think that there is like almost like your member software, which I think would be like a Zen Planner or oh gosh, I can't think of any at the top.
Wodify, Push Press, Mindbody. Yeah.
And then there's like the actual like texting, email software, which we use High Level to not only communicate with like members when they're like in classes already, but also leads and like organizing your conversations with leads. So I say that because there's different ways to utilize those softwares, and you can pick like whatever ones you want. But the point is you need to build out your own systems and automations and use those softwares in the ways that are going to support your gym and your processes and like your operations. And that's something that we help our clients with in Factory Forge Momentum. Like we know that like that might feel overwhelming. Like, how do I set this up? How does this work? Like, typically they'll come in with a Zen Planner, Wodify, Push Press, and that's kind of what they're using to like create communication and attendance with their members. But then we help them get set up on Go High Level and like help them use that in a way that really supports their lead generation, their marketing. We put together all the assets, the funnels, the messaging, the email campaign, like all of that, so that really they just come in, put in their membership list, and like the automations are all going and good to go. So I think that's like a really important thing to say, is that like to scale like your support and guidance, like you are going to need a software that can help you do that, because it's not going to be effective if you're texting everybody every couple days or emailing, or like manual work. You're going to want to like limit to as little as possible and really lean on those systems and automations to help you with that.
Yeah. And I would say there's a lot of people using the software, but what makes our model different and unique is, remember, we are one of the only, if only, people that really advocate charging profitable rates. And in order to charge profitable rates, you have to rise up in terms of the level of service that people will see value in. And one of the things that we've done is design the service around charging profitable rates so that the owner feels like it's a good deal, but for the member to not only feel confident that they're getting that level of service, but you also have it organized in a way that it scales, that it is a good use of putting the time, energy, and effort into the software. And that is one of the number one issues why people get held back from raising rates, is they don't know how to show more value. They don't know how to organize the softwares that they do have in a way that the members actually feel supported, feel guided, feel like it's a presence that they were able to purchase. And it wasn't just narrowed down to a class. So if you're questioning, saying, hey, I've already got this service or already used this, the next level of thinking is, are you charging profitable rates? If not, your software might actually be holding you back because it's not implemented in a way to support the right rates for you to actually earn enough money to pay yourself professional income, or it's not set up in a way to actually provide value where people are responding to your messages. I've seen far too many softwares, Andrea, have sequences and campaigns, and it just kind of feels like these very general messages. And that's not enough nowadays to support people staying with you long term, let alone charging $225+ a month. And that is the key difference, I think, is if you want to raise your rates, you're going to have to do that from the use of a software, but you also have to do it from a level that what is the way that it needs to be delivered to support that person staying with you year round. And that's what I think makes us different and unique, is we are the experts at doing that and have, dove down this. Unlike, many people in the industry, it's hard to raise rates. But what I'm saying is we have found a solution that complements both the tech side in teaching people that and the right level of touch points and psychology that is supporting people saying, this is freaking worth it. And this is absolutely a place that is delivering on that promise, even at $225+.
Yeah. So you're saying it's not necessarily just having a software with campaigns and sequences, it's having a software that understands and supports high level, like, service, and like allowing someone to walk through the lead marketing side effectively.
Yeah, if it was that easy, everyone would be charging $225 based on getting a campaign or an automation system. And that's the important piece. If you're not getting responses, if you're not charging professional rates that are profitable, then you don't believe that campaign is actually enough, because that's the gap. And what I'm saying is, when you invest in both the software and the mindset behind keeping someone at that level of payment fully supported, you'll realize the power of the messages. Each one of those messages, how they're sequenced, what they say, all matter. It's not enough to just copy and paste it. You have to specialize in what is the right amount of support and guidance, what is the right message to keep someone at that level. We're the experts at that.
Ooh. Well, that was the last one, talking about onboarding, attendance, support, and guidance, and how to scale all of those, which I think is just an important conversation to have when you're looking to scale your gym, right? Like, I know that I'm ready to scale. I know group is the program to scale. So then how do I service that group program with scalable solutions?
Yeah. So then if you're out there looking for that, that's exactly what we do. Great way to end the podcast, and saying, if you want coaching, if you want yourself the guidance and the accountability to set up a business marketing and overall operating system to support that, then join our 12-week program. It's called Momentum, and it's designed in a way to give you the marketing, the qualifying, the sales, the onboarding, and the complete member service systems, all within 12 weeks, where you feel in control, you feel confident, so that you can charge $225+ to new members and feel 100% that you're delivering on your promise. And in turn, you will completely transform the business to the point where your current members will then come up to the right rates. And that ultimately is what we're doing, is creating scale in your business, which is a better life, an easier or simple, business to run, but also getting the financial stability that you're looking for, because you've built in the right price and you've been able to back it up and keep members long-term. So join our Momentum program if you're interested in getting the guidance and the accountability and a fully built out service software. We got you covered. Head over to factoryforge.com/call. We'll hop on a quick chat. I'll make sure that we align with what we're looking to accomplish. I'll help point you in the right direction and give you tips. But more importantly, if you're here to really implement and execute, then don't delay. Let's start working together and start transforming the business.
Cool.